Hi everyone, this is Nick Pollock here from Roar Lions Roar. While you're here, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that alert bell so you never miss any of our new content. And if you prefer to listen instead of watch, make sure you check us out on your podcast platform of choice where you can subscribe and download each new episode. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. Go State! Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Roar Lions Roar. I'm your host tonight, Nick Pollock, and I am joined by my wonderful co-host, who I've not been on a podcast with in quite some time, Mr. Matt Filipovitz. Matt, how you doing?
Nick, some inside baseball for the listeners. This is our third attempt to record this intro. I have lit a candle. The scent is snowball cookies, and I'm hoping that brings us good vibes and allows us to actually get relatively far in this recording. But I'm good overall. How are you?
Yeah, I'm hanging in there. I put on the flannel jacket today to up the Pennsylvania vibes in the household. So hopefully that means good things for some upcoming decisions coming Penn State's way in the next few days. But
I have
we
an
have a
extremely
lot.
Pennsylvania sweatshirt on right now, Nick. I'm gonna rise it up so our YouTube viewers can see. But this is an extremely Pennsylvania sweatshirt. It is Penn State as the stars on the American flag, like the chipmunk logo, and it says Penn State Nation, Nittany Lions USA on it. So I'm very, very festive for both Penn State and for the United States in the World Cup.
I mean, where did you acquire such a sweatshirt?
At the Salvation Army in Whitehall, Pennsylvania.
Because of course, where else would it be? But Matt, we need to jump into it here because we have a lot to talk about tonight, which is kind of shocking considering the time of year, because this is kind of like the dead zone, right? Like as we wait for bowl game announcements, the conference championship games are this weekend, and Penn State obviously is not playing in that. But this is going to be a really busy offseason for a lot of reasons, and we'll talk a little bit more about why it's going to be so busy in the transfer portal in just a little bit. But first, in the last podcast, Bill and Matt discussed the decision by left tackle Olu Fashanu to return to Penn State for one more season, at least in 2023. The other day, though, Penn State got the news that Joey Porter Jr., starting cornerback, will be heading to the NFL now. He's going to skip the bowl game as well. Not necessarily a surprise decision, but still, it'd be cool if he came back, but it's cooler to see him go because he's going to be absolutely going to be a first-round draft pick. He's been an absolute star in Happy Valley, and it's just been really fun to watch him go from, oh, yeah, it's that NFL player's kid, to, wow, he's actually really good in his own right and obviously a completely different player and, very ready and about to start carving out his own NFL legacy. This past season, 11 passes defended, third in the Big Ten. Of course, teammate Kalen King was first in the Big Ten, but teams just really didn't throw at Joey Porter Jr. after week one. Purdue and Aiden O'Connell oddly felt it necessary to continue targeting his side of the field, and it didn't go all that great for him. So it was really fun and cool to see him just completely erase a half of the field. Penn State hasn't really had a guy to erase opposing receivers quite to the degree that Porter did, especially this past season. So it's going to be a bummer not having him, but couldn't be happier for him and what he has ahead of him. What are your thoughts on him leaving, Matt?
Yeah, he's going to be the first round corner in Penn State history. He's going to be the highest drafted defensive back in Penn State history, and that's a big deal. Terry Smith did a great job with this guy. I remember when I first found out he was going to play corner and not safety. I thought this was the route we've seen a lot of guys take, where they start at corner, get those ball skills down, and then move back to safety. Like, I really thought Joey Porter Jr. was going to be Marcus Allen with better ball skills. Like, he's similar build, he's got similar length. I really thought that's what we were heading towards. And for Porter to go out there and become pretty much the perfect modern corner, great length, great athleticism, really good ball skills. He got a lot of the penalties out of his system. Granted, he didn't get the ball thrown his way a ton because of how dominant he was, just basically blanketing receivers with that long wingspan. And he's just, I think, going to be really important for the next step for Penn State. They needed to get a guy at a non-traditionally strong position at Penn State, drafted highly, and that's exactly what Porter's going to be. So really excited for the kid. Glad he got in and out in 4 years. Really hope he goes to a really good situation, because he can be the kind of guy who can elevate a defense from day one. So just really happy for everybody involved, and the depth that's sticking around with him gone is still going great. So both parties just really benefit from this happening when it is. And just really excited for Porter and excited for the program to finally have that elite level secondary player to go in the NFL draft.
Yeah, like you said, he didn't get the ball thrown a lot his way after week 1, but even when he did get the ball thrown his way, like you said, like the penalties were not nearly as much of an issue this year because he's just gotten so good with finding the football and using his hands in a way to just affect the football and not so much the receiver. Which if you can do that at the size that he is, and obviously be able to run with essentially anybody he's up against, like that is a fierce combination. And honestly, like that is the formula that made Richard Sherman so good in the NFL for so long. I'm not saying Joey Porter Jr. is Richard Sherman. That's a high bar, but like that's the style he plays with. That's the game he plays. So really, really excited to see him play in the league. I think he's going to be a star for a long time.
Yeah, really, really happy for him and really happy for Terry Smith, especially.
Yeah. And it's funny that Penn State has never had that first round cornerback. This might be the first of 2 straight years they have a first round cornerback because Kalen King sure looks like Kalen King might be better, honestly.
Kalen King's a better cornerback. I think Joey Porter Jr. is a better football player, if that makes any sense.
Yes. Joey Porter Jr. is a better NFL prospect because of his size too.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But regardless, we'll have plenty of time to talk about Kalen King, and I would not at all be surprised to see him pull a Joey Porter Jr. next year and erase his side of the field. But congratulations, Joey Porter Jr. and Joey Porter Jr.'s family. Really exciting for them. Let's talk about the other side of player movement, the transfer portal. Now, obviously, this has been building for a couple of years, but the transfer portal feels like it's about to hit its initial crescendo, at least since the rules changed and
good word.
Players are now able to leave whenever they want. This is now 2 years removed from the recruiting class. I guess it's the 2020 or the 2021 recruiting class, the kids that were seniors in 2020 that most of them didn't get to play their senior seasons of high school because of COVID. That was kind of a blind recruiting period for everyone involved. Schools had to, they were working off of numbers and measurements from the year prior. They were working off really limited tape here and there. Schools couldn't have camps. They couldn't see kids in person, all that stuff. A lot of college football analysts have been talking about this offseason as being what is as projected to be an absolutely crazy time as far as the transfer portal is concerned. Because now with 2 years under their belts at these schools, kids and teams and coaches alike all have a much better sense of, is this the right place for me? Is this school, am I going to play here? Is it worth me staying? Or, do I need to be moving up? Do I need to be getting playing time at a Power 5 if I'm someone at a G5 school instead? There's going to be a ton of portal movement this offseason, and we will talk about, all of that with Penn State. We have plenty of time to talk about that in the coming weeks and months, really. So we will get to, as those names continue to emerge, we'll talk about them. But today we're going to talk about 2 guys in particular, already, notable for Penn State. And the first one is quarterback Christian Veilleux, who decided to enter the portal just a couple days ago. In his 2 years at Penn State, Veilleux started 5 games, overall a stat line, 23 of 35 passing for 282 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. But for me, Matt, when I look at Christian Veilleux, one, I think he's a really talented kid, and I think he's going to find success wherever he ends up. I saw someone speculate that he could go to Kentucky and just follow Will Levis's footsteps. That'd be pretty interesting. Yeah. But for me, when I think of Christian Veilleux, there's a really fascinating alternate timeline that exists where he doesn't have a senior season of football canceled, and he comes into Penn State much more experienced and ready to contribute right away, and that he's the one who has his name called in Iowa City after Sean Clifford goes out with an injury, and he is able to, successfully pilot the Nittany Lions over the finish line. And if he's able to do that, in this alternate timeline, maybe the coaching staff doesn't feel the need to rush Sean Clifford back on the field, and all of a sudden, maybe you beat Illinois without an injured Sean Clifford. It was more probably the weather that played a factor in that than anything, but like there's a fascinating alternate timeline there. Obviously didn't come true, and wish Veilleux all the best no matter where he ends up, but it's kind of interesting to think about in that regard.
Yeah, Veilleux, I think it's fair to say, outplayed his recruiting rankings. Like, this is a dude who was
Hmm.
a middle of the road
I
three-star
bet he would have
prospect.
risen too if he had played that senior season.
Oh, yeah, his intangibles. Like, he's got the size, he's got the arm strength. Like, he was playing in Canada and came down to play big boy ball down in Maryland and never got the chance really to show what he could do. You know, on a large scale. Like, he played a little bit, but it wasn't enough for people to really see what he is. And I think he's a guy who
Mhm.
is going to go on to be a multi-year starter at a Power 5 program. Um, the Kentucky thing would be interesting. He is, French Canadian, so I think if he goes somewhere like, I don't know, Syracuse, Pitt, Boston College, Rutgers, I think he would be a guy who can really elevate a lot of those programs. And that's really all you could ask for out of a guy in the COVID class who didn't play football for an entire year. To have enough talent to where you could probably start at this program if the number one quarterback in the country wasn't right on your heels, or in the case of Aller, surpassed you. So Veilleux's a guy who I think is going to be very successful at the college level, and who knows what'll happen in a couple of years, when the NFL could come calling. But he's, like our friend Tommy Stevens that we had on the podcast, I think he's at least a professional at the Canadian level one day. So he's a guy who's going to make a lot of money playing football. And, I'm bummed it's not at Penn State. I get why it's not at Penn State, and I'm excited to watch wherever he goes next. I think he's going to be a guy who will start somewhere next year.
Yeah, as far as Penn State quarterback depth without Christian Veilleux in the picture, next year, obviously we're looking at Drew Aller as the starter in all likelihood. Bo Pribula, who has continued to get rave reviews from everyone that we've heard from at practice, heard from the staff secondhand. It really sounds like they do love Pribula, and I think if the immense talent of Drew Aller wasn't in the picture, I think Pribula would have a really easy inside track on the starting job. But he doesn't seem like he could be a transfer portal candidate in the future if Aller takes off the way we hope and expect him to. But he'll definitely be around for next year. And then, of course, they're bringing in, oh, wow, I'm totally blanking on the kid's
Jackson
name. They're in the
Smolik.
recruiting. Jackson Smolik, yes. He'll be coming in as well. And, we heard from Ryan Snyder when he was on the podcast a couple weeks ago about how impressed he's been with Smolik's game. I know Smolik just got named the All Iowa, whatever they call it. I assume they call it All Iowa High School, whatever it is. But the All Iowa High School quarterback nod, which is pretty great. And I know that he is somebody who, I think it sounds like Snyder and the other recruiting guys think that he's probably fairly ranked where he is now, but they're also really impressed with what they've seen from him. So obviously you hope to not have to use him next year, but he'll be in the room as well. And then, Penn State will continue to recruit quarterbacks beyond that. But
and Smolik will be
like
in
you
for
said,
spring, which is big.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, like it'd be great to still have Veilleux around next year just for depth purposes and experience purposes, but you can't fault a kid for wanting to go somewhere else where he can get a better shot at playing time. So we wish him all the best. It's going to be fun to watch him wherever he ends up. On the other side of transfer portal news, we got the announcement, or the declaration, whatever you want to call it, that Oregon receiver Dont'e Thornton will be entering the portal. I don't know if he's officially done it yet or he's expected to, whatever
You can't
enter
it's
at
until
currently, but
December 5th unless you're a graduate. Like, that's how
that's
Cade
right.
McNamara could announce he's going to Iowa tonight already because he's a graduate. So undergrad players have to wait until the 5th.
Yeah, so Thornton not officially in the portal yet, but his intentions have been made clear, and he will be entering the transfer portal. Now, if his name sounds familiar to any of you out there, that's because Dont'e Thornton was once a Penn State commit. Originally committed to Penn State on February 2nd, 2019, eventually decommitted on August 1st, and ended up going to Oregon. He grew up in Maryland. He went to Mount St. Joseph High School in Baltimore, I believe is where it is. And, Oregon was, as all through his recruitment, there were constant mentions about how Oregon was his dream school growing up. They were always kind of on the radar as a threat to Penn State, even after he committed. And then obviously, of course, did end up flipping to Oregon. He didn't flip right away. He decommitted from Penn State, continued with his recruitment. Penn State was still in it until the end, but he did end up choosing Oregon. But he's a really interesting name for Penn State because, Matt, one of the things that we talk about pretty frequently as far as this Penn State receiving core goes is the lack of a true like X type receiver. And when we say X type receiver, we mean like, big body, like Allen Robinson type, or like, I mean, it's a lofty comparison. Obviously, I'm not at all saying that Dont'e Thornton is Calvin Johnson, but like that body type, just that big dude on the outside that you can trust in one-on-one jump ball battles, that kind of thing. So it's, I think this is a great opportunity for Penn State to add a body like that to this room, especially with Malik Mega and, not quite panning out the way they were hoping to. And he's another transfer portal candidate as well, I would assume.
Yeah, it's hard for Penn State to judge what they need at receiver because the elephant in the room is Parker Washington's decision. And I think it's very fair to say that Penn State is going to be a run-first team in 2023. And they're going to get the tight ends heavily involved. So how much do you really need an extra body at receiver is really going to depend, to me, on Parker Washington. No matter what, you're taking Dont'e Thornton if he wants to come here. And I think your biggest competition is probably Arizona State, where his offensive coordinator at Oregon is now the head coach. But in terms of if I think they really need a guy like that, I think it all depends on what Parker Washington does. And listen, it's that time of the year. Like we could finish recording and this could all be, useless, data points because Parker is either picked one way or another. But as of right now, I don't think he is the biggest priority in the transfer portal for Penn State because I don't think receiver is the biggest priority for Penn State just yet. And again, that'll change completely if Parker Washington goes. But he's definitely a guy you want on your roster if that opportunity does present itself.
It's interesting. I think that's pretty interesting for you to say that, Matt, because for me, I think that receiver is absolutely a priority in the portal, regardless of Parker Washington's decisions. Because I think we saw this past year, like if you watch this past year's offense, I think it's pretty evident that they, like if they had a, someone the size of Thornton, and according to Oregon right now, Dont'e Thornton standing at 6'5", 199. To me, if I imagine a body like that who can go up and get the football on Penn State's offense on the outside, I think that opens up a lot for Washington and Tinsley and other guys over the middle of the field. Like I think that would make a big difference. And I think as you're going forward, if everything goes to plan, you're only going to have Drew Aller for 2 seasons. And I think
Right.
you need to get as much high-end talent at the receiver position in there immediately as you can for that reason. So to me, I think adding a big-time receiver is actually, for me, it might be priority number 1 in the portal.
I get that, but you made the point that you need the big play guy on the outside. The tight ends were that. Like, if you think about how many times Penn State ran out of the stack, it was Theo Johnson. If you think about in the most recent game, Clifford's fade to the corner in one-on-one coverage to a big body guy, it was Tyler Warren, a tight end. Like, I don't think they need this type of receiver that desperately with the kind of offense they're going to run. Is my overall point. Like, again, I still think if the opportunity is there and if Thornton wants to come to Penn State, you take a guy like Dont'e Thornton, but I think a defensive tackle is going to be way more important in the transfer portal than an X receiver who is probably going to be like on any given play, like the third option, just because I think they're going to be that run heavy and that much involvement will be, taken up by the tight ends next year.
My rebuttal to that would be, don't you think the offense though, all those same plays you just talked about, all the same ways they use the tight end, couldn't they just do that with a big receiver who is way faster than, like Theo Johnson can move, but way faster than any of those tight ends as well. I think it adds, I think it helps take your offense from hopefully great to hopefully elite personally. But I see where you're coming from though.
We've never seen it work at Penn State, which is my concern. Like Justin Shorter was supposed to be that guy. It never happened. Daniel George was a 4-star guy who they were hoping were to be that guy. It never happened. Like, this just hasn't worked at Penn State, and I just can't imagine it would yet. And again, I think the tight ends are going to be so heavily involved because there's so much talent there. And on those shorter teams, on the Daniel George teams, like when that was maybe a possibility of him becoming that, like the tight end depth wasn't what it is now. So that's the only difference. That's my rebuttal to your rebuttal in a sense.
I would say I think Shorter could have been that guy. That didn't work out for
Yeah, but
different
he
reasons we
wasn't
don't need to
though.
get into
Yeah,
here. But
yeah,
I mean, I suppose that's fair. But that like the way he wasn't as big as those guys, but Chris Godwin, played big. Like he
hmm
played that role, even though he wasn't that size.
yep,
So I don't think it's necessarily fair to say it's never worked because that's what they used Godwin for. And I
that's
think
fair.
Godwin was more suited to be able to do that than say like Parker Washington is.
Yeah, oh for sure.
And then obviously go back a little further, different offense there, but obviously Allen Robinson was a
hmm
totally different animal in that role. But
Yeah,
that's an unfair comparison because that's outside of the Franklin era. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's obvious. So I know, Matt, you mentioned a second ago other possible suitors for Thornton, but obviously Penn State is in this discussion. One, proximity to home. He's from Baltimore, like we said, but also, he was committed to Penn State. He understands Penn State. He knows the coaches. Slightly different coaching staff from when he was being recruited, but still, he knows the main core guys. He clearly can see, I think Penn State's a really attractive destination for transfers right now. One, because they've now proven that they can put transfers in position to succeed, whether you look at Arnold Ebiketie or you look at Derek Tangelo or Mitchell Tinsley or even look at Jordan Stout. Like they got a punter drafted. Like that's a big deal. So you look at Penn State, it doesn't take a lot of brain power to see the position they're in. They are going to be in a New Year's Six Bowl this year. We'll talk about which one a little bit later on. But they are really well set up for the future. The roster is so young. It's going to be an attractive spot. And I think the staff is going to, as long as the NIL stuff is able to be worked out to compete with other schools in that regard, I think the staff is going to have a pretty good pick of who they want in the portal.
Yeah, I would agree. And Penn State can afford to be picky, which is another very
Right.
big luxury that we haven't seen a lot of programs like Penn State have the chance to be.
Yeah. The only other thing, player personnel wise, before we get into some other topics here, one, right now it is 8:53 local time on the East Coast right now. Penn State is looking to potentially get a commitment from four-star cornerback Daniel Harris tonight. From what I can tell, it has not happened yet. Could very well happen while we're continuing to record this podcast. Yeah. But Daniel Harris, former Georgia commit, decommitted, I think about a month ago at this point, but he is somebody that Penn State is very high on. He is the number 155 player overall and the number 21 cornerback on the On3 composite rankings. On3 themselves has him ranked a bit higher. He's number 42 overall, the number 6 cornerback. If Penn State is able to land him, which it does seem like they are the favorites to do right now, he would become their highest rated defensive back in the class, which is saying quite a bit because this is an unbelievably talented defensive back class for Penn State. To your point earlier, Matt, about what Joey Porter Jr.'s ascension does for the program profile. Like this secondary has been on the rise for multiple years now, and now it's gotten to the point where there is just talented dude after talented dude after talented dude stacked in this room, and it is awesome to see.
And what you have it up right now is Harris's height. Is it 6'2"? Am I remembering that correctly?
I wrote down notes like an 80-year-old, so I can pull it up while you talk, though.
I think he's another bigger bodied guy. And again, Penn State has had success. Amani Oruwariye, they got him drafted
6'2", 175.
Look at me. Look at the memory on this guy. So he's a bigger body, and that's what Penn State has clearly liked out of their corners, or at least having one corner of at least over 6'1". Like I think Christian Campbell was about that height. Amani was about that height. Joey Porter Jr. is a big guy. So there's a track record of, and all three of those guys I just named all drafted into the NFL. So there's a track record here for guys of a similar body type, and that's what I think makes it so attractive. Also, shout out to Jaywan Sider for going back into Florida and getting a guy to come up to Pennsylvania, potentially. We still, again, nothing's official yet. It does sound like it'll happen yet tonight. And if it doesn't, who knows? Maybe tomorrow by the time we're listening to this, it'll have happened already. But that'll be a big get. And for Penn State, you can never have too many bodies, especially at a position like that where they have had misses with lower 3 stars over the years. So anytime you can stack blue chips in that room, it's only going to help you out.
Yeah, especially as we were just talking about the portal, Penn State has a really talented defensive back room, but that does mean there are going to be dudes in there that want more playing time than they're getting. So it'd be foolish to not assume that there could be at least one or two transfers out of that room, whether at corner or safety this offseason. So definitely important to continue to stack talent in that regard. Matt, let's talk about home field because it's holiday shopping time. Have you bought any home field items for anyone on your list this year?
My mom really likes the Take Me to Happy Valley crew neck that I have. She doesn't listen to this podcast, so I'm probably going to get her the t-shirt version of that and surprise her with that. So that's the big one right now. I'm debating what I want to do for my dad. My dad, I think as listeners know, coached high school ball in Eastern PA for a long time. Basketball, I mean. And there's a lot of like really absurd old school basketball logos for a bunch of different schools. So I'm going to think about, where I know he's been to like a camp at or where he's had a player recruited to. And I'll probably do something along those lines.
That's a good idea. My parents sometimes listen to this podcast, so I won't give anything away here. But needless to say, if you need any ideas for your loved ones, friends, family, whoever, for Christmas gifts, holiday gifts, Hanukkah gifts, whatever it may be this year, home field is a great place to look for that. If you're listening to this now, unfortunately, you did miss out on the Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals. But luckily for you, if it's your first time ordering from Home Field Apparel, you can still use our Roar Lions Roar code. If you can type in Roar Lions Roar, all caps, all one word at checkout, you can still get 15% off of your first order through Home Field. They've got all the great stuff you need. They've got t-shirts, crew necks, long sleeve shirts, sweatshirts, all that stuff, tank tops in some cases, depending on where you look, what school you're looking at. But whether you're looking at Penn State gear or any other school, Home Field's got the best stuff. They do the research. They find those niche, unique designs to find the stuff that will really resonate with you and resonate with your love of your school and make you proud to wear what you're wearing. And of course, they're made on the best quality shirts. None of that 100% cotton stuff. Got that nice mix of polyester, just a little bit of cotton, that good stuff. Those t-shirts you love to wear. So if you need anything to spruce up your holiday shopping this year, go ahead and visit Home Field Apparel. Use the code Roar Lions, Roar, all one word, all caps at checkout for 15% off of your first order and be the true star of the gift giving season in your home this December.
Nice.
That was pretty good. Yeah, that was pretty good.
Well done.
Yeah. There have been times when I've written down a read and it usually sounds better, but that was off the cuff. I'm happy with that one.
I'm proud of you.
Speaking of things we're happy to hear about, Matt, one of
You're
the
on a
big
roll
topics.
What a transition, too.
One of the
We're gonna have to
big
call you into
topics.
the league office to get you tested for performance enhancers. This is an unprecedented run.
One of the big topics of conversation the past 3 or 4 days or so, pretty much once Ohio State, once Ohio State fans were done freaking out about the loss to Michigan, and then the brief freak out about Brian Hartline mixed in here too. It has become very clear over the last 36, 48, 72 hours, whatever it may be, that Ohio State is not interested in playing in the Rose Bowl this year. We've heard from multiple sources now that they have formally asked the Rose Bowl not to invite them, or that they would not accept whatever the final verbiage would be. And that puts Penn State right in line to be the Big Ten representative at the Rose Bowl this year, which is something that previously seemed like it had only been was going to be possible if both Michigan and Ohio State were in the playoff, which also still absolutely could happen depending on the results of the TCU and USC games this weekend. But it seems like it is pretty much a done deal that Penn State is going to be in the Rose Bowl unless Purdue is able to defeat Michigan in the Big Ten championship, which feels unlikely. Sorry, my wife just came in the room and is opening closet doors. That's the noise you may hear in the background. But yeah, barring a Purdue upset win, which probably unlikely, but who knows? Purdue does well against those top 3 teams, especially number 2s. But honestly, and even then, the Rose Bowl committee could still pick Penn State if they want to. Like it's still a decision, just given the disparity in where those 2 teams are kind of lined up right now. But it's pretty exciting if you're a Penn State fan right now, knowing that the Rose Bowl is the likely destination after what has turned out to be a great season. In all honesty.
Yeah, the Rose Bowl against Washington, I think we're all kind of leaning towards it. This is assuming, of course, USC beats Utah in the Pac-12 title game. And what a fitting end to Sean Clifford's career. His final game as a true freshman. So he wasn't the starter or anything like that. but it was the Fiesta Bowl against Washington. And it could come full circle now 6 years later, with his final game being one he starts in the Rose Bowl against the Washington Huskies. I just think that'd be really neat. The Rose Bowl is, of course, the thing you dream about if you're not
Granddaddy
going
of
to
them
the
all.
playoff. Yeah, you want to go to the Rose Bowl. And it would be really cool to see, after everything this group of seniors has been through, COVID, bad years, just real highs and lows of the sport, to go out with a trip to the Rose Bowl to play in one of the most prestigious games in college football would just be really cool. And I don't love playing Washington because it feels like we just played them. I know I just said it was over half a decade ago at this point, but still it feels pretty recent. I would have loved to have played Utah, but I mean, beggars can't be choosers, and it'll be a blast. I would have a great time watching Penn State compete in the Rose Bowl.
And to be clear, like if Utah does beat USC, then the Penn State Utah matchup could very well happen, because at that point Utah will be the Pac-12 champ and they won't be in the playoff, so they will beat the team in the Rose Bowl. So very much still a possibility. But yeah, I love that you mentioned. I hadn't even thought about that the final game of Clifford's true freshman campaign was that Fiesta Bowl. That hadn't even clicked with me. That's pretty interesting. And there's a lot of fun. Things to pick apart in a Penn State Washington matchup here. First, selfishly for me, that would really excite me, living in Seattle and knowing a bunch of Husky fans. That'd be a lot of fun. But Michael Penix is Washington's quarterback right now, and the last time that Penn State faced off against him, it that's kind of slipped my mind. I'm not really sure what happened in that game.
I think that's
a blank. That's a blank for me. Oh yeah, you're right. It was definitely canceled. Definitely didn't happen. You're right.
No,
but that would be fun to see him for I think it would only be the third time they'd be playing against Penix, because I believe he was injured one of the years when they played.
Yes.
But that'd be fun. Washington is with Penix there. They've been, and Kalen DeBoer is their head coach, obviously former offense coordinator at Indiana. So Penn State's seen him before, but they're a really high flying passing offense. Like that's how they beat teams. They beat teams through the air, and throwing the football is really all they can do. They don't have a great defense. They don't really run the ball, but they can throw the hell out of the ball. So that'd be really fun to see Penn State secondary without Joey Porter Jr. Obviously, he's opted out of the bowl game, but it'd be really fun to see Penn State secondary with Kalen King, Johnny Dixon, all those guys go up against Penix in that passing attack that has been really impressive this year. And another fun parallel to the 2017 Fiesta Bowl, in that game, Penn State threw that was probably the height of the Saquon Barkley, Miles Sanders duo, because Saquon was on his way out. Sanders had been there for a year at that point, I believe. So they both had, 2 years. They both had enough, like Sanders had enough experience at that point. That was probably the best they were. That was the best they were both playing while they were at Penn State at the same time. So that's a fun parallel when you look at Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. Like, there's a lot of fun things about that matchup. The most fun though being that it would be taking place at the Rose Bowl, which that would be a lot of fun to see happen again, and it would mean a lot for Penn State.
Have you ever been?
No, and I think I would be able to make the trip down this year if that did happen, if it does happen the way we assume it will. And I get why Ohio State doesn't want to go. They were just there last year. Obviously they had playoff ambitions this year. It didn't go their way, lost in the last week. And, for them, they'll call that embarrassing fashion to lose to Michigan, especially to lose to Michigan 2 years in a row. But when you were just there, and I get it from the
Rose Bowls have had Ohio State in it. I think it's 3 of the last 5, which is a lot.
And if you're the Rose Bowl, do you really want a lethargic Ohio State who's treating it as a consolation game? Is that really the team you want there? Or do you want the team that, is coming off of 2 really tough seasons, is now, very much ascending back up to the elite level of college football, whose fans are going to travel, of course, incredibly well, as they always do? It feels like a no-brainer for the Rose Bowl. And it's just really exciting for the team, the players, and the fans. This is exciting for the fans too, for sure.
Yeah, it'd be really cool to watch. I probably won't be able to make it, which is a major bummer, because I would have loved to have seen the Rose Bowl. I've been to UCLA's campus, but I've never been to the actual Rose Bowl stadium, which I know is pretty far away from campus. So a bit bummed about that, but still it'll be beautiful to watch on TV.
Yeah. And, especially relevant because after this year, next year, the Rose Bowl will be one of the college football playoff games. And then after that, we are entering into a whole new world, Matt, because the 12-team college football playoff has now officially been accepted, written, signed, sealed, delivered, starting in the 2024 college football season. The Rose Bowl will become one of the quarterfinal games, I believe it is. So it's just going to be a tad different at that point. Still will be a really cool setting. Obviously, it's always a really cool setting, but it's not going to be quite the same as it was now. And my friend Matt and I here have...
This is going to be the most insane discussion we've ever had.
We have some disagreements on the merits and the inherent goodness and badness of the now expanded 12-team playoff. I am very much on the side that this is, one, good for fans, two, good for college football, good for the health of college football. I'll explain why in just a little bit here, but really in all facets, you'll have a hard time making me believe that this is not a good thing. Matt, I know you have been, pretty staunchly on the I want it to stay 4 teams train for quite a while now. So we're going to take this time just to, have a little fun debate about the two sides of this argument here. So, Matt, I'll let you kick it off here. Why is it that you think the playoffs should stay at 4?
Okay. Let me walk this out in real time. I like 4. If the playoff has to expand, and I get that it has to expand eventually, I think 8 is the way to go. I think 12 is too many teams for the college football playoff. The thing I love about college football is that every game in the regular season matters. The playoff doesn't matter to me personally that much because I view the entire regular season as a playoff game. If you want to go to the playoffs, formally go to the playoffs, don't lose. I get it. I get that's a lot to ask, but the playoff should be reserved for the elite of the elite. And it's going to make me nuts that unless Penn State makes it next year, Penn State is going to be known as a program that was not able to do it when making the playoff was the hardest thing to do in football. And Michigan did it. Ohio State did it. All of these teams that we want Penn State to catch so badly can hang their hat on that. And the only way Penn State could get into the playoff is via the expansion. And I don't know why that makes me so angry. I never really get mad at college football, but the idea that Penn State is always going to be second tier in that regard, unless they make it next year, just drives me insane. 12 teams is so many teams. If you lose 9-3, let me see how quick math I can do. All right, so you played 12 games, you lost 3. I guess that's a quarter of your games. If you lose 25% of your games, you don't deserve to go to the playoff. You only play 12. If you can't win 11 of those 12, you don't deserve to go. And listen, I'm just a guy who used to work for our website, which is now a podcast, yelling into a microphone. But
I'm gonna get you a shirt that says that.
It's loser energy. It's loser energy for Penn State to be I want Penn State to make the playoff. Therefore, the playoff expanding is good because Penn State couldn't do it while it was the hardest thing to do. That's just loser energy to me. I'm sorry. I'm very fine with the playoff expanding to 8. Make it the 5 Power 5 champions, the top team from the group of 5, and 2 wild cards. Make it so it's got to be extremely hard. 10-2, I'm fine with that being a playoff caliber season. But the idea that you could go 9-3 and be given a playoff spot, I think is just ridiculous. It makes the regular season not matter as much to me. And I'm sorry I'm going on a tirade here, Nick. I know.
No, you keep going.
Cede time to you, but I get games only matter as much as you make them mean. But you know why it's so funny to laugh at Ohio State this week? Because they probably will not be able to go to the playoff, and they lost to Michigan. If they just lost to Michigan and, they're going to be the 8 seed, that's not nearly as funny to me. The fact that Ohio State now has to say, we're too good for the Rose Bowl because they weren't one of the top 4 teams is objectively hysterical. That entire state is going through a identity crisis right now. People are questioning whether to fire Ryan Day, and it's the insane passion of the sport that makes it so beautiful that I think will be diminished if you just say, "Oh, Ohio State, you lost to your biggest rival. Okay, instead of that derailing your season, instead you now have to go play at Clemson in a playoff environment. Instead of your season now means absolutely nothing to you in a lot of ways." So that's my 2 cents. I get why it's expanding. I'm still going to be really into it when it happens, but it just feels like loser energy to me. I don't know.
Okay, so I'll try to respond to all those points. So one,
sorry, that
on
was
the
a lot.
case of no, it's fine. On the case of you would prefer 8 over 12, sure. Like I'm willing to I would have no issues with going to 8 instead of 12. The only reason that I think that 12 is a better number than 8 is because, to your point about, what does the regular season matter, or just very specific, what does the game matter at this point between Ohio State and Michigan? Seeding in this playoff is going to be a huge deal, because if you're in that first round, you're going to get a home game on your own campus, which is in the NFL, who really cares like where that game is played? Like if you're playing somewhere notoriously loud, like Arrowhead or Seattle, or like someone like, yeah, I mean, it can make a difference, but like in the end, like if you're in the NFL, the talent levels are all way too similar for something like that to make a huge difference. In college football, though, we see it on a weekly basis how big of an impact being at home plays. So, as far as, games like that not mattering and saying, oh, well, now we have to go play at Clemson instead, like whatever, who can? No, that's a big deal. Like you have to now go play at Clemson's, home stadium to advance in the playoff. Like that's a big deal. So yeah, I guess like that's kind of where I'll start. Like your whole point on like the passion, like it, to me, in a very, if we're talking very specifically about like Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, is Penn State's annual game against Ohio State now diminished a bit? Yes. Is Ohio State and Michigan now diminished a bit? Yes, absolutely. But for me, the trade-off of saying these games matter a little bit less, other than seeding, which again I think is going to be massively important in the college football playoff, to have those games matter a little bit less, to have like 20 more games every single week matter impossibly much more. Like that is a trade-off I'm willing to make every single time. Just as a lover of college football, and to take off the Penn State, colored glasses for a second, just as a lover of college football, to have all of those games be so incredibly important, like that means a ton for me, like as a fan. Like that is a huge factor for me. But I think the other thing for me is that, and not to say that you're necessarily one of these people, but I think there are a fair number of people out there. I think a lot of the people who are against this move are probably the same people who were against the playoff in the first place, right? Do you think that's fair to say?
I guess I was very pro playoff when it first happened, because I think it needed to go to that. Like I think it was necessary to expand it, but I do agree with that. Majority of people who said the playoff would ruin college football in its 4-team format are saying the same thing now. Yes.
Right. So let's put ourselves back in the BCS timeframe then, when you were, playing to hopefully be one of those top 2 teams and be in the championship game. But if not, like Rose Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, Orange Bowl, like those were all like, that was a significant accomplishment to make it to one of those New Year's Six bowls or one of those top tier bowls. Moving this to 12 teams makes it more similar to that system than it was with 4 teams. Because right now with 4 teams, it's like, if you're not one of the 4 teams, like we saw it last year to a greater degree than we had ever seen before. If you are a player with NFL aspirations and you're not in that playoff, the chances of you opting out of your bowl game was probably like 85% or higher, right? Like it was just not something they did. But if you're talking now 12 teams now, and you're saying like 12 teams is too much, there's 6 New Year's Six bowls, and that means 12 teams. So like that, it's really the same number that has been the focus of the the upper end of the ultimate prizes of college football for the majority of its history, it's still the same number. It just looks different now. And now you're introducing the chance for those teams to continue their seasons. And like, I feel like one of the other arguments that we hear is, oh, well, like, are you telling me you really want to watch like Alabama play Tulane and have Alabama win 49-22 in Tuscaloosa? Sure, that very well could happen. It probably will happen multiple times. But is that not like, is the trade-off of saying I don't want to watch that, isn't it worth it to say, but what if Tulane beats Alabama in that game? Like, is that not like on Bama's home turf? Like, is that not a worthy trade-off? Like, I think that is. I think the chance of that happening, and again, very similar to the NFL, right? It's like when the 7 seed or the 6 seed goes on a run and tears through all these other teams they weren't supposed to have any business of beating. But like, for me, it's bringing college football back to the format that it was pre-playoff, but adding all the best elements of playoff systems into it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely, even since last night when our Slack got in an argument over this, I've shifted a little bit. And there's two things I want to address in that. Making the playoff has been the entire goal for Penn State football for the entirety of my adult life. So it's very hard for me right now to wrap my head around the goalpost moving now to where all I've wanted my entire adult life has been for Penn State to make the playoff. And once this happens, the goal is now going to be to win multiple playoff games, is now what I have to learn that it's going to shift to. So like, that's something that I have to reckon with, just like me, Matt Filipovitz, the person, in that the goalpost is moved now. Like, I have to deprogram myself from making the playoff is the goal to now making the playoff for Penn State is the expectation. And like, that's something that I think is really hard for me to wrap my head around right now. And the other thing is, and this is so stupid, and I know I'm just going to sound like an idiot, I want them to make it at 4. I want them to join Michigan, Ohio State, and Michigan State as programs that can say, when it was the hardest thing to do in college football, we went out there and we did it, and we made the 14 playoff. That is stupidly, incredibly important to me, because if you look at that tier of college football that Penn State wants to be on, Penn State is probably the only school that never made the playoff, right? You think that, especially if USC makes it this year, like Oklahoma did it, USC did it.
I believe
probably going to do it.
I believe
Florida
they
State
are
did it.
I believe they are the team that if it had been a 12-team playoff all along, I believe that it is the team that would have made it the most often that did not actually make it. I believe is where they are.
Like, Penn State is the like ugly stepchild that just could never get over that hump, and getting over that hump has been such like a core part of my identity as a Penn State fan for the better part of a decade. And the fact that when they finally do the make the playoff thing that we've all been so focused on, just because they expanded it, that just feels like loser energy to me. Like, and listen, like I get it. Like, expanded playoff means more money for advertisers, and in theory, you know, people like being able to stay engaged. Like, I don't know. I don't think the point of this all is to win national titles. Again, because Akron and Alabama play for the same title technically. But I just want to make it at 4. Like, I just want Penn State to be seen in the same light as those programs we're chasing. And if it expands to 12, it's now going to be cool. You made the playoff. Like, okay, like that wasn't that hard. And again, I think making the playoff should be the hardest thing you can do in college football. And I don't like that it's now becoming infinitely easier for a program like Penn State. So that's what I'll leave.
So I think that I understand your wavelength here more than probably 98% of Penn State fans, because I'm a Seattle Mariners fan. And while the Mariners were not the final wild card this year, the circumstances that led to them ending their playoff drought, the fact that a third wildcard spot was added this year certainly played a factor into it. Again, they weren't that last wild card. They ended up getting the second wild card, but just the way that the season played out and who gets eliminated when, it definitely played a factor in that. So I very, very much understand. Like, during that whole stretch run for the Mariners, I was saying, please God, don't be that last wild card spot, because then it will forever be hanging over me that the drought ended because the system changed. So I very, very, very much understand that. But I think the big difference between that situation and this one is that four teams, 4 college football teams in a system of, I don't even know how many we're at now. 131. It's not just that the number of teams that can qualify is such a statistically tiny number compared to the teams in the field. It's the fact that so much of it can be outside of your control. Like, obviously you win all your games, you're in. If you're Penn State, like, it's easy to say, well, it's in your control in that regard. Like, win. That's fine. But you just think back to 2016. Like, is it fair? Is it fair that Washington, and again, if we're really going to get granular about it, like, I think Ohio State should have been the team that didn't make it in lieu of Penn State, if we're going to dig up the 2016. But like, think about Washington didn't play anybody that year. They won their games to their credit, but their schedule was so much softer than what Penn State had to deal with. And Penn State went to beat the number 2 team in the country in Ohio State. Like, to me, like, this is not, like, that's not an equivalency with what the Mariners or MLB teams do, because there is an inherent disadvantage baked into the way that things are aligned. Now, like, could you be a baseball fan and say, oh, well, I'll keep it on the Mariners. Could I be a Mariners fan and say, hey, well, there's an inherent advantage that we're in the same division as the Astros? Sure. But the wild card is, it literally just comes down to your record. It's just win-loss, nothing else. Whereas here in college football, it's coming down to 12 people in a room deciding what they think is right and wrong. Like, there's just inherent disadvantages here baked in if you're Penn State, when you have Michigan and Ohio State in your division.
Michigan State had those.
Misstep. They did. I'm not saying that Michigan State did great things in order to, well, they did great things and got very lucky at the same time in order to get over that hump. But when it's not a level playing, because it's not a level playing field.
It's not, like, supposed to be. That's 9 not times what college football is.
But shouldn't it be like?
No, it shouldn't be. Like, this isn't the NFL. This isn't, if you ever lose, in my opinion, if you don't make the playoffs in the NFL, that's just like incredible loser energy. You have the same amount of resources as everybody else. Like, win your games, figure it out. Like, college football to me is representative of America. Like, it's unfair. People have more money. The teams that have more money win more. That's what makes upsets possible. Like, that's what makes it so cool when Appalachian State goes to beat Texas A&M. Like, that can never be replicated in a fair system, and that's the beauty of it all. And I'm going to give a take that will probably get me canceled by Penn State fans. Okay. I would have been really into it if they made it in 2016. They lost twice. They did not deserve to go to the playoff in 2016. That game against Pitt matters exactly the same as that final game against Michigan State. I get that they got better, but you play 12, all 12 matter the exact same. Like, I get that they got better. They still lost to Pitt. Game 2 isn't any more or less important than game 12. Like, if they wanted to go to the playoff in 16, don't lose to Pitt. I'm sorry. I was at that Pitt game. It was one of the worst days of my life. But I don't think that in the current model, Penn State should have gone. Don't lose twice. Like, if you want to make it in this model, win your games. Like, find a way.
I don't disagree with that point. I don't. Like, it's the objective is, it's right there. It's win them all, and you're in. You're good. You go. But I disagree with the premise that it shouldn't be fair. Now, not to say that, like, your broader point, I agree with. Like, I'm not saying that I want Alabama and Akron to have the same exact, like, I don't want this to become like socialist college football. Like, I don't want this to be utopian football. Like, I don't want it to be like, okay, Alabama, you get 2 of the 5-star recruits. Akron, you get 2 of the 5-star recruits. Like, that's not what I want. That's not what I'm saying I want. But if we're talking about, like, the ability, like the selection process and the ability to qualify for this significant event, in this case being the college football playoff, and you're telling me that as Penn State, you have to navigate your schedule with Ohio State and Michigan every year, And then you're telling me you can be USC. Let's say USC now, and this is a good year for the Pac-12. So it's not. I'm not saying this argument about this year. Like, I think the
Let's
winner
go
of the
TCU
Pac-12
then.
is sure TCU, because the Big 12 was not great this year. Like, I don't think the accomplishments of those two teams, like, one, how can you possibly like what if Penn State was 11-1 and their loss came to Michigan? Let's say they're in Ohio State shoes. Like, to me now, like, having to compare two teams that you haven't seen play head to head, all you can go on is their record. Like, why how can you definitively say that and let's leave Penn State out, let's just make it Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
How can you definitively say that TCU is a better team than Ohio State? You can't. Which I get. I get that you can. I get there's reasons why you can't. But for me, if I am designing a playoff, or I'm watching a playoff play out, if there's an opportunity to settle some of these debates and, go back to the whole TCU and Baylor fiasco of being left out back in 2014, I believe it was. Yeah. Like, if there's a way to get around that, and there's a way to just let these teams play it out, as a lover of college football, I would rather see that than have a room full of 12 people decide those matchups.
I mean, the point of playoffs isn't for the best team to win. It's to create an intriguing tournament. Like, that's all playoffs are.
Right.
Like, look at the NFL. Like, if the NFL went by seeding, like, the NFC South wouldn't get anybody in, but they get to send somebody. Like, the TCU won their games. Congratulations. Here's a playoff spot. Like, it's that simple for me. Like, the point of this isn't to get the best 4 teams in. It's to who had the 4 best seasons. I think that's a better way to look at it. Like, TCU beat everybody.
But that's not what they do, though. But that's not. That's what that committee and what the college football, the system is laid out to be, in the way it's described and the way that they carry themselves, is that they are trying to find the 4 best teams, not the 4 most accomplished teams. That's my issue with the committee in general. Is because, one, they don't know what they're doing. Like, right? Like, they change their criteria every week.
Yes, yeah. The committee's not a well-run group of people. You'll never catch me defending the committee.
And making this move to 12 lessens the need for them to be anything.
It's just going to happen with teams 13 and 14 now, as opposed to teams 5 and 6.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. I mean, there's no way to avoid it in a sport with 131 teams. Obviously, like, it is going to be a thing. But when your system has 12 teams, like, if you're Baylor, let's use Baylor. Is Baylor, do they ever end up making a playoff? I don't think so.
Never made a playoff. Mm-mm.
Yeah. So if you're Baylor, you are forever looking back at 2014 and saying, why did we never get our shot? But if you're in a system with 12 teams now, if you can't make it back up to the top 12 again, that's you can very easily now say, like, if you can't get back to that threshold, maybe you really didn't deserve it that time. Like, for me, that's a lot less harsh than what Baylor is dealing with now. Although Baylor got karmic justice, and Baylor got stomped on in another way, so they have other things to worry about.
I mean, window programs. That's the whole thing. People are gonna get so annoyed with me calling this a window year and Penn State a window program and whatever. I know it's already growing tiresome. Baylor's a window program. Sorry, you missed your window. Like, I'm sorry. I'm not going to feel bad because you lost the game. Just win your games and you get there. Like, and again, I will totally change my tone, and I am fine, looking like an idiot when I love the playoff in 2 years. I don't care that much, like, about looking wrong. Like, we're recording this podcast on December 1st, 2022. So I'm going to say how I feel about this on December 1st, 2022. And I don't want Penn State to be a program that can say, wow, we made the playoff. And then for these teams that we're chasing to say, yeah, but the 12 team one, like the 4 team one is what I've been conditioned to hope for in a season for just about a decade. And moving the goalpost, I think, is just something I'm not ready to wrap my head around. And I want to make it at 4. If they make it at 4 next year, I don't care anymore. Penn State proved they can make it when it's the hardest thing to do. Expand to 12. Like, my take is a very uniquely, I think, Penn State thing because, like you said, Penn State is that team that has won the most games or been the closest and never made it. And that's a shitty place to exist in for a college football program. And I want to see them be able to get over that hump before that hump becomes barely a speed bump.
I think I'll respond to that, and then I think we can probably cut it off there for the playoff discussion for today.
We don't want to do this for another hour because I could keep going.
I think my counter argument to that would be, again, like I explained before, I totally understand I totally understand wanting to make it before it changes, the whole Mariners analogy, yada yada. In the end, though, like, let's fast forward 6-7 years. All that I care about as a Penn State fan, college football fan in general, I care about the health of the sport. But for Penn State, all I care about is that Penn State is able to continue improving and continuing to climb towards the truly, truly, truly upper elite echelon of college football. And making the playoff is going to do that. Because once you're in the playoff, you can't win the playoff if you're not in the playoff. And I get that. Like I said, I get the point that you're making with the wanting to make it with 4. But 6-7 years from now, personally, I don't care. I'm not going to care if they look back, if like some Ohio State fans talking smack to me and says, oh, well, you never made it when it was 4. I don't care. All I care about is whether we beat you this year in the playoff. Like, it is, and you've said as much that you'll naturally adjust to it, just like everybody will. Everybody
Yes.
on every side of this argument is going to adjust to what the reality is going to be, regardless of their feelings now. But for me, like, I get the sentiment, but you fast forward a few years, give me, like, if Penn State's making the playoff or in position to make the playoff every year, will I look back on the years where we had 4 teams and be like, well, I still look back on 2016, 2017 and say, man, I really wish we had made it that year? Absolutely, I will. Of course I will. I think everybody will. But I just don't think that is going to matter to anybody after the 4-team system is gone. Like, once we go to 12, that's all it's going to matter.
Yeah. I do know.
I understand the
I know
sentiment,
my opinion
but
now doesn't matter because it's going to change in 5 years.
Right.
Yeah.
And, and then, 10 years from now, maybe less, we'll have the same debate about whether 12 was better or 20 is better. And we'll do this all over again.
Yep.
I think the one thing, and neither of us are going to really do much to change each other's minds here. That's not the goal here. But
No.
I think the one thing we can definitely agree on is that it is very cool to get confirmation that the first round games will be home games for each school. That's awesome.
I'm a bit nervous.
That's going to be really cool.
Plumbing. I'm a bit nervous for Beaver.
Yeah. We'll see. Pat Kraft has been on the record saying that they will make sure Beaver Stadium is able to host such a game, because there's no way that Penn State fans would be happy to have that game gone and played in Indianapolis or Pittsburgh or Philadelphia or wherever they would move it to. There's no way they're going to let that happen.
Did I ever tell the story on the podcast about the bathrooms for the Penn State Maryland game in 2018? Did I ever tell you that story, Nick?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
So I was in the press box for Penn State Maryland 2018. It was my last game as a student reporter for the blog, and the pipes in the press box froze. So if you wanted to go to the bathroom, you had to go down to the main concourse, and you could either wait for the elevator, but everybody waited until halftime. So you had to wait then for the coaches to come from the box above you before they let you on, or you could brave the wind tunnel that is the stairwell. So I tried to brave the stairs, and some Maryland student reporter turned to me and he goes, "Is this place always this terrible?" And I just started dying laughing. I was like, yeah. So they got a lot. That was 5 years ago at this point. So I hope they can fix it in the next couple of years.
Oh, God. I mean, knowing the Penn State press box, it's probably still exactly the same. But
oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh, man. All right. Well, I think that about dealt. We've gone for over an hour now talking to, a lot of interesting things to talk about. Don't get me wrong. But
what's our next episode going to be? Can it be what's the best 10-win season under Franklin? Because I think you and I disagree on this too.
Ooh, that could be a good one. Yeah, we can make that a running theme this offseason.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Don't know why my dog's yelling.
Agrees.
We can make that a running theme. Yeah. We can have our favorite Penn State disagreement debates. That's a good one. But I think that's going to do it for tonight. Like I said, we're going to have plenty to talk about in the coming days, weeks. In just a couple days' time now, once conference championships wrap up, we should have a final verdict on where Penn State will be playing its bowl game. Again, most likely going to be the Rose Bowl, but who knows? Crazier things have happened. We'll continue to be back here talking about the portal, talking about recruiting. We'll get Ryan Snyder back on for a recruiting podcast sometime soon, maybe a portal podcast as well. Could be interesting stuff to talk about there. But Matt, any final thoughts on anything we've talked about tonight?
J1 Siders tweeting, we rolling deep tonight to Florida, and then tagged a bunch of the assistant coaches. So I don't know if that means some good news is coming, probably the second after we hit stop. So be on the lookout for maybe some good stuff coming in the recruiting pipeline here in the next couple hours, couple days.
It could be. That could also be referenced. I believe all the coaches are on the trail right now, though, too. So they could just be. He could be with a couple other guys down. Although it's 9:30 now, so man, kind of a little late for a tweet like that. But yeah, or they could be on their way, whatever it is. But yeah, I fully expect Daniel Harris to commit the second we hit stop on this podcast, which is fine. It's fine. We'll talk about it the next time. But if you are listening to this podcast, I'm assuming you're already subscribed wherever you're listening to. But if you're not, please be sure to hit that subscribe button on your podcast platform of choice. If you're watching us on YouTube, please make sure to subscribe and hit that bell to get the alerts to know when we send new videos live. Hopefully next time we try a live video, which we did attempt here today, it didn't go very well. Hopefully the next time we do that, it goes a little bit better. But, as always, thanks everyone for watching and listening. Visit Home Field, use that code RoarLionsRoar, all caps, all one word, at checkout for 15% off of your first order. But that's going to do it here tonight for us at Roar Lions Roar. I'm your host, Nick Pollock, for my co-host, Matt Filipovitz. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Go State.
Go State.